Hello, I'm Jake, Mr. Jake, and I'd like to recommend a fairy tale. Now, before you consider paying a visit to a doctor to have your ears examined, allow me to confirm what I just said. Yes, I do in fact want to recommend a fairy tale. It's true that fairy tales are not really my genre, but I do like some of them. I like Christopher Walken's version of The Three Little Pigs. I like Lord of the Rings. I do think it's overrated, but I still like it. I love Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters with Gemma Arterton and Jeremy Renner. Fantastic movie, but the one fairy tale that stands out to me as the greatest of all time is Little Red Riding Hood, the uncensored original. I can't stress this part enough to you. The uncensored original and not the bookstore version that most of you know. There is, in fact, an uncensored original which 99% of the population of this planet has never even heard of. I, however, know this version, and I will be more than kind enough to share it with each and every one of you. No need to thank me. I do this out of the kindness of my heart, because I am a selfless person. So, our story starts pretty much the way you would expect. Once upon a time, blah, 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 blah. So, once upon a time, there was a genetic research facility at the edge of a dark forest, and at this genetic research facility, scientists were conducting, what else? Genetic research on wolves. Specifically, their goal was to create a cross between wolves and anacondas. And that is why they had to resort to gene splicing, because classical crossbreeding methods would not have worked in this case. And one day, one of the specimens, codenamed the Big Bad, escaped this facility. And you'd think that the scientists would want this escaped specimen hunted down, but they did not do that. You see, the guy in charge of this facility, a Dr. Moran, was far too concerned about getting fired simply for having allowed a specimen to escape in the first place, even if he managed to track it down. So he decided to just cover up the whole thing and pretend that no specimen ever escaped, pretend that the escaped specimen never even existed. So our hero was able to escape unhindered. Because make no mistake about it, the hero of this story is in fact the wolf. So, our hero made it into the forest without any problem whatsoever, and then, once there, he tried to sate his appetite. His gigantic genetically engineered appetite, which he had courtesy of the scientists. He ate what he could find. Rabbits, foxes, deer, hell! He even ate a bear, and it just wasn't enough. However, there was a cottage in this forest where an old woman lived called Grandma Red. Now, Grandma Red, this day, was doing the exact same thing that she does each and every day. She was baking cookies. Now, let's pause here for a moment, because those of you who know the bookstore edition probably think that this is wrong, because in the bookstore version, it's Little Red Riding Hood who takes the cookies to Grandma. So what's going on? Well, what's going on is that the bookstore editions got it all wrong. In the uncensored original, Grandma Red bakes the cookies, and Little Red Riding Hood goes to her once a week for free cookies because she's a freeloader and because she can't cook jack shit, let alone bake a cake. You see, this is what reality television does to our youth. It was bad in the 1800s already. So, Grandma Red was baking cookies, fantastic, delicious cookies. Trust me, I know a thing or two about cakes. So, she was baking her delicious cookies, and the wolf smelled it across half the forest because he had an extraordinary scent courtesy of the scientists. He found his way to the cottage, broke down the door, walked straight into the kitchen, opened up the oven, took out all the piping hot half-baked cookies and ate them one by one, not caring about the fact that the piping hot cookies were burning holes into his tongue. Now, the old woman did not take kindly to a complete stranger breaking into her home and eating all her cookies, so she picked up a spatula and started beating up our hero. Now, our hero did not take kindly to being physically assaulted, especially not in the middle of his lunch, so in an act of rightful self-defense, he opened up his massive jaws and swallowed Grandma Red in one piece. And you'd think that was actually enough to satisfy his hunger, but in fact it wasn't. See, he was a genetically engineered wolf with a genetically engineered gigantic appetite. He needed even more food. So he searched the cottage from top to bottom, sadly could not find anything. The only thing he was able to achieve is he ended up physically exhausted by all this physical activity, so he decided to take a nap in the most comfortable spot in the cottage that he could find, Grandma Red's own bed. And that is when our lead villain, Little Red Riding Hood, showed up. You know the type. A cute little redhead wearing a red hot red cape and not much else. She showed up at the cottage, saw the broken down door. What did she do? Did she call the cops? No, she did not do that, because that would have been the sensible thing to do, and unfortunately for Little Red Riding Hood, she was in fact not a natural redhead. I should probably skip that part. Damn those Brothers Grimm. Sexist bastards. Let's just say she wasn't particularly bright for some weird reason. She walked into the cottage, not stopping to think that she might end up gang raped if there are, for example, burglars in the cottage. She found the wolf in her grandmother's bed, and she actually mistook the wolf for her grandmother. I know, it's a really stupid thing, but she had an excuse for this mistake. See, when the wolf searched the cottage for food after eating Grandma Red, he also rummaged through the wardrobe of the old woman and ended up all tangled up in her clothes. So when he went to bed, he was pretty much wearing the old woman's clothing. Furthermore, Little Red Riding Hood was short-sighted and far too vain to be wearing glasses. And that is why she could not tell the difference between her own grandmother and a 7-foot-tall, genetically engineered cross between a wolf and an anaconda. So, she woke the wolf up. And since she was so convinced, so thoroughly convinced that it was, in fact, her grandmother in that bed, contrary to popular belief, she did in fact not inquire about the size of the wolf's ears or eyes or lips or anything. No, she just asked one simple question. Grandma, Where are the cookies? And then the wolf, being annoyed at the fact that he had just been awakened from his beauty sleep, in an act of rightful self-defense, opened up his massive jaws and swallowed Little Red Riding Hood in one piece and then went back to sleep. And if this were a story with a happy ending, then it would end right here. But, you see, the Brothers Grimm, they preferred horror and tragic endings, so the story does in fact continue with the arrival of the hunter. Now, this hunter, he was an even bigger freeloader than Little Red Riding Hood, because while Little Red Riding Hood at least had the decency of showing up at the cottage only once a week for free cookies, the hunter came by every single day. On the other hand, he was much smarter than our lead villain Little Red Riding Hood, because when he saw the broken down door of the cottage, he immediately knew that something was amiss. Still, he did not call the cops because he was a bit of a vigilante inside as well as a hunter by trade, so he just whipped out his weapon of choice, the 12-gauge double-barrel Remington shotgun, a smart top of the line, and walked into the cottage with that thing. He found the old woman's bed with the wolf in it, and he immediately recognized it as a wolf because he had 100% eyesight. He was surprised that the wolf was so big, but a wolf is a wolf, and a wolf in an old woman's bed is a wolf in an old woman's bed, so he immediately aimed the shotgun at the wolf's head. And then, in an act of spiteful cowardice, he did not bother to warn our hero, did not even bother waking the wolf up, no. He immediately pulled the trigger, discharging both shells at the same time, splattering our hero's genetically engineered brains all over Grandma Red's bedroom. And then, the hunter stopped to think about the situation. The conclusion for him was very easy to draw. No old woman, no cookies. So he did the only thing he could do, he panicked. And after he calmed down, he did the only other thing that he could do. He took out his hunting knife, which was nowhere near as beautiful as this one, but it was an impressive piece nonetheless. So he took out his hunting knife and he stabbed it into the belly of the wolf and cut it open. Then he dragged the two half-digested corpses of Little Red Riding Hood and Grandma Red out of the stomach of the genetically engineered wolf. And then he took out his first aid kit, which was given to him by his brother Herbert. He filled 2 syringes with the revitalizing serum, which again was invented by his brother Herbert, and he injected both corpses with that serum. Then Little Red Riding Hood and Grandma Red both sat up like the Undertaker. They stood up, they walked over to the hunter, and they both planted a kiss on his cheek. And then they asked him how they could ever possibly thank him for it, for saving them. And then the hunter just smiled and said, "Give me some cookies, Grandma." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Little Red Riding Hood, the uncensored original. As you can see, it's a lot better than the popular version, the bookstore version. It's got a likable hero, a sexy villain, and countless references to classics like The Isle of Dr. Moreau or Jack the Ripper. So it's a story that just begs for a big screen adaptation, and that is why I would like to close this video with an open request to people like Sam Raimi. please make a movie out of this fairy tale. This version, the uncensored original, not the bookstore version, this version. Here's what you need to do. Get Bruce Campbell to play the hunter, this goes without saying. Get Jessica Chastain to play Little Red Riding Hood. I'm certain she would appreciate the chance to play the villain for a change, and I know a lot of people who would love to see her in this role. Then get Judi Dench to play Grandma Red, and put a cameo in there by Jeffrey Combs, that never hurts. Do this, and you will have yourself a billion-dollar blockbuster that you will make tons of money at the box office with. Just one very important thing. One simple detail that you must pay attention to. Make sure that this movie is rated R. Because if it's not rated R, then it's not worth a damn.